Wildman Rouse here, and I'm going to show you today why you should be shooting high ISO to capture amazing images, because if you're not, you're missing out. Now, as wildlife photographers, we get used to working in low light because most of the things we photograph do not want to come out in bright sunlight. They come out when the sun is at its lowest or not even out yet, which means we get very, very low shutter speeds, and that results in poor quality pictures. So the point of this video is to show you some of the highest ISO pictures that I've shot, all of which are commercial and all of which have sold, okay? And I mean sold to the commercial publishing world. So that should show you that what I'm telling you is good enough quality for them. It's good enough quality for you, let's hope. Because I know a lot of photographers, they won't shoot above ISO 400 or 800, which I think is a terrible, terrible mistake because you miss out on so many great opportunities for light and behavior. So without further ado, let's get going. So this was at ISO 32,000. 32,000. Why did you have to do that? Well, it was really, really dark and grim. It was in a forest. I had to get at least 2.5, 3,000 of a second to get the kingfisher erupting out the water. And I just couldn't get it. There was no light. It was raining. It was black clouds. It was horrible. So I set the ISO to 32,000 because I wanted the shot. All that counted for me was getting this shot. It was really, really nice. I know it wasn't going to be one of these beautifully lit shots with the sun and all that, but I wanted to get this shot in the grim light. I had to get it for a job. So I set the ISO to 32,000 and I didn't worry about it because the noise in a RAW file, you're going to get noise at 32,000. It can be removed. There's loads of great noise reduction software out there, post-processing to do it. Photoshop Enhance is the latest. I did a video on that. It's absolutely great. I would recommend using it in Photoshop or Lightroom. And I have no problem about removing the noise out of images because I would rather have an image that's slightly noisy than not take it at all because I'm too scared of putting the ISO up high. So 32,000, 25,600. This is my mate Adam Reborg from Sweden, and he's my guide in Svalbard. We went into this old Russian mining settlement, and inside the old swimming pool, I saw some amazing light. I promised I'd do him a nice portrait. I saw some amazing light, and I said to him, stand here. The light was terrible, so I shot ISO 20,000, gave it nice and dark and moody, took all the noise out, and I got a perfect portrait. You know, it's all about the light with me. When I see the light, I want to use it. I don't worry about the numbers and the ISO and stuff like that. I don't go on to endless forums to discuss it. I don't care about what other people think about the high ISO noise I've got. I only care about what my clients think. Because when I send pictures out to them, obviously they're really noisy and grainy, they won't use them. So the lesson is you don't send the pictures out that are noisy and grainy, you remove it first. But first and foremost, this whole thing here is about having the courage to shoot at high ISO and get a decent shutter speed to get the picture you want in low light conditions. I shot this one by mistake, dodgy eyesight. I thought I set it to ISO 2000 and I set it to ISO 20,000. It's a laugh. But the quality of it came out really, really well. I took a bit of the noise out. I didn't need to take a lot. Of course, it doesn't compete with a picture that was ISO 1600 or something. It's always going to be a bit more noisy and a bit less detail. But the woodpecker didn't come later on in the bright light. It only came in the gloom before the sunrise. So an example there of why you would certainly shoot high ISO, okay? You've got to take the pictures as you see them. This elephant, this was shot ISO 16,000. We left the camp at 6 o'clock. Sunrise is at 6:30 in Africa. So literally we found it at 6:01 right outside the camp. I love the bokeh of the lights underneath. I wanted to get the picture, so I put it to ISO 16,000, which gave me a 30th of a second. That was it. But a 30th of a second, this is on the OM1, so it's got really good IBIS. So I know that at a 30th of a second, I can hold it still. Okay, that's it. It gave me a fighting chance of getting a really cool picture by setting the ISO high enough to give me some kind of shutter speed. 30th of a second, you can all hold that still. ISO 16,000, this one. This was on a camera years ago that most people said could never shoot above 800. And I don't believe any of these kind of things. So I shot it at ISO 16,000 because that's what the light was. I wanted an amazing picture of a gorilla hand to show how little difference there is between us and them, and it's to kind of convince people in the world why we should conserve amazing primates like gorillas. I mean, you know, it's actually got, I've got about as much hair on my hand than it has. But here's the thing, you know, I had to shoot at ISO 16,000, otherwise I wouldn't have got the picture. Flash would have ruined it. Flash ruins so many pictures, in my opinion. I'm not a flash user. It ruins so many pictures. I much prefer to shoot in daylight because I want the natural shadows and textures to come out in the picture like you see here. This bull elephant the day before, I'd walked in perfect sunlight. I'd shot it at like ISO 400. It was absolutely brilliant. The next day it was cloudy and horrible. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. So I had to shoot this at ISO 12,000 to stop it walking. But I don't care, you know, low angle makes it look really, really good and dominant. I put it in black and white and I removed the noise completely, you know, so you get this really nice image that you wouldn't have got otherwise. If you sit there thinking, oh, I can't shoot, it's ISO 400, so I'm going to shoot at a third of a second and hope for the best, that's not doing any justice to your photography. So high ISO works no matter what camera you have. Obviously, I use the OM1 now, which is superb at high ISO, but the point of this talk is that it's about all camera systems. When I turned up here to this squirrel, it was underneath the great big conifer tree. It was a cloudy day. The light was appalling. Again, ISO 12,000 because I needed to stop the munching. They tend to munch and move a bit, so I needed to stop that fully. So ISO 12,000 again. I didn't even think twice about it. I do these kind of shoots sometimes. This is like a scene from Brief Encounter, if you like. It's organised by a friend of mine. Really, really great shoot. And it's handheld. A lot of people use tripods. I don't want to use tripods. I want to handhold because I want to move and get many different compositions. For me, it takes too long to set up the tripod. So I handhold, I move around, and because I'm hand holding, I've got to have a high ISO to get some kind of picture there. I've got to try and shoot slightly with a slower shutter speed to blur the mist, but high ISO allowed me to walk around. Back in the day, this is a leopard called Bahati. She was hunting after the sun had set. Okay, and once again, your choice is take a slow shutter speed and take art, or bang your ISO up. Shoot brighter when you I deliberately put these tips in the middle, see, so that you have to actually watch the video. So when you shoot high ISO, you never shoot on the left hand side of the histogram unless you mean to shoot a silhouette. You shoot on the right hand side of the histogram, so you've got your peak on the right hand side, not against the overexposed axis, but on the right, so you get a nice bright image that you don't have to brighten, because if you brighten it, you get the noise brightened, which you don't want. So you shoot it perfectly in camera, and you've got no excuse to the mirrorless camera because you've got histogram right there. So I shot this. This is well before mirrorless, ISO 8000 on a camera that the manufacturer said to me, you can't shoot it ISO 8000. It will be rubbish when it comes out. It's not rubbish. It came out beautiful. Look at the eyes. Look at the quality. This is the thing about shooting in later light when the sun's gone away. The sun ruins so many pictures with its shadows and its harshness and everything else. When it goes, everything is pure, everything is great. So there you go, this lovely picture of Bahati the leopard. Look at the eyes. I had a shutter speed here of 125th of a second. Gave me a fighting chance at ISO 8000 to actually get something worthwhile like that. And then she started stalking through the grass towards the vehicle, using our vehicle to shield her from her prey. Absolutely fantastic. Look at the light on that. And look at that when she was flat to the ground crawling. I wouldn't have got that had I been at ISO 400, because she was moving, it would have been a bit blurred. Maybe a bit blurred would have been a good picture, but there's too much chance there for something so rare as this. So bang the ISO up, get a shutter speed that gives you a fighting chance to get a picture. Look at the lovely light on that. You know, the lesson here is that, you know, the light after sunset is actually beautiful. For 20, 30 minutes after sunset, you get a beautiful glow that you can actually use really, really well. Here is a beautiful glow after sunset. So you can see here again, ISO 8000. I've not any low ISO pictures at all. This is 8000 because it was so cute. They only came out after the sun had set every day. So every day we went to see them on the way back, and they were only out after sunset. They weren't playing at any other time, not in the morning, whatever. They were in an area full of hyenas, so the mother kept them inside, literally a den, believe it or not, underneath a tree, and they would only come out in the low light. So I had no choice. So ISO 8000, nice picture. Of course, sometimes I was on a job here and I had to get a picture of the otter running. It's in captivity, this one. And I had to get a picture of it running. It was really a horrible day, grey, rainy. The shot had to be done on the day. So ISO 8000 here gave me a fast enough shutter speed to stop the motion of the otter. If I hadn't have done ISO 8000, I would not have got the commercial picture, and would have not have done the job. So for me as a commercial photographer, shooting high ISO is a no-brainer, okay? The client loved it. The client couldn't believe, I actually didn't tell them what ISO it was because I remove it, And if they don't know, then it's all better for them. This was a couple of weeks ago. This was a Cheetah on the OM1. This was ISO 6400. Again, like no choice. 6 o'clock in the morning, half an hour before sunlight. The Cheetah stands there. It's not going to stand there for half an hour. I have to take what I see, so I can either make an excuse of, oh, ISO 400, there wasn't a light, and sit there and watch, or I can bang the ISO up to 6400 like I did here, and get a nice portrait. Beautiful portrait without the sun ruining it. So lovely tones, lovely detail there in the fur, lovely eyes. It all worked together. Again, a leopard, ISO 6400 again, because so I've stepped down. I did start at 25,000. I'm coming down to it. 6400. Absolutely zero light. 15 minutes after sunset. But the light quality is still there. You've got to expose it right, as I said. So you've got to expose it to the right of the center line, so plus compensation. But it really works. And I think it really, really looks cool. These lines came on the track. You know, they weren't going to come on the track in the light. They came on the track. ISO 6400 again. Really lovely eyes on them as well, apart from the one at the back that didn't get the memo. Again, I have to take what I see, okay? It's a lovely picture of lions actually there. They split after this. As soon as it gets warm, it's very warm in Savo at this time of the year. So literally 5-10 minutes after sunset, they've split. They're not together. So this was a unique family moment, and I had to capture it, banging the ISO up. When you photograph cock of the rock, they fly off at sunrise. It's really annoying. So you have to get there before sunrise. And if you're not willing to shoot high ISO, you're not going to get anything. In the old days, I went and shot this on ISO 3200 on a film camera, and to say it was appalling was an understatement. But now, when I went and shot this on the mirrorless this year, the OM1 this year, ISO 6400, beautiful detail on the cock of the rock, nice detail in the surroundings there. You're not expecting it to look like a bright sunny day, because if it did look like a bright sunny day, it wouldn't be a real cock of the rock. Okay, so they like these low light conditions, and I like the low light condition because all the tones are the same. If you're shooting in these pre-light conditions, all the tones are the same. There are no annoying highlights and stuff. It's a really much more pleasing picture to have. And as I say, noise can be removed. Don't worry, we're getting to the end now. Derek the Hare, this is ISO 3200, so a bit lower now, coming down 3200. That hopefully will be, for a lot of you, your first bridging step. You'll be used to shooting at 800 maybe ISO, and maybe it's too much to ask you to go higher than 3200 at the start until you believe me. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. But so 3200 ISO is a good step. Here, you can see the light hadn't come up yet. It's a beautiful picture, got beautiful light in the background. And that's the thing about shooting these sub-light conditions. You get beautiful light, okay? If you're willing to bang the ISO up to give you a shutter speed that gives you a fighting chance, you get beautiful light to take pictures. Or no light. I was out, squirrel sat on the footpath sign, absolutely no light whatsoever. So 3200 because I wanted to get kind of the leap, or if it did something exciting. So sometimes I'll put it on a high ISO because I want to predict the shutter speed. I want to make sure that I can get some kind of action if some action happens. This was this year. It was a really grim day. Alligator in Ecuador. Terrible, terrible light. I was using a pole cam, so I'm not in control. I'm kind of wobbling a bit. So I'll bang the ISO up a lot sometimes to negate for any wobble that I do, especially when I do my air-to-air photography. So I'll bang the ISO for shutter speed. Talking of which, yeah, I do use higher ISO sometimes to increase the shutter speed to make sure that I get the result I want. So I have no problem like this bar now putting it at ISO 3200, even though there's sunlight, to make sure I can get a fantastically high shutter speed to be sure of getting all of the action, because it's flying back into the nest. There's a lovely habitat flying across, I tracked it across, carrying a vole. I didn't want to miss it because it's a unique thing. It didn't come out the rest of the night. So that was my shot. So I banged the ISO up to 3200. Now, I shoot a lot of hummingbirds, okay? And hummingbirds are always, always active. I don't use flash. I use natural light because I like the colours of natural light. I don't like the colours of flash. Okay, so I use the natural light on them. And hummingbirds, I say, are always doing stuff. So you always want to be on a few thousandth of a second to capture whatever they do, okay? And it's amazing how fast their wings go. I mean, this is on 2,000th of a second, and look, it's got wing blur. It's really, really, really fast beating. This is a sparkling violet ear hummingbird. They have fantastic names, hummingbirds. This sparkling violet ear. We call it the sparkling violent ear because it basically wars with every other hummingbird that there is. But here, ISO 3200, deliberately, even though I didn't have to, I could have shot this on ISO 800, but I banged it up 2 stops to 3200 to get enough shutter speed to make sure I got the action. And with, I use Pro Capture a lot with the Olympus system, sorry, OM systems, And with Pro Capture, I want to get the motion sharp, so I will use a high ISO to make sure I can get a high shutter speed. With birds like this, I need a 5,000th of a second to make sure that I get the action sharp. Okay, on a day like this that wasn't the greatest, to get 5,000th of a second, I need to use ISO 3200. I have no problem at banging the ISO up to give me a high shutter speed to record action. That's another trick when you use high ISO. Here, two warring greater spotted woodpeckers. Again, if I hadn't have used an ISO of 3200, I wouldn't have got a shutter speed of a couple of thousandths, and I wouldn't have frozen the action like this. It would have been an excuse, and I would have been really, really annoyed at missing this picture because it was quite unique. Sometimes with a macro like this, I don't do general macro because I'm basically rubbish at it. So I try and do some action macro, butterflies flying, and like this beautiful demoiselle flying. I need a high shutter speed to do this, even though it's a nice weather, even though the sun was out. It was kind of shady in this bit of the brook that I was in. I'm still at ISO 3200 to get the shutter speed to make sure that I can get the motion of it. And I'm tracking this with autofocus on the OM1. It worked beautifully. And the last image I'm going to show you was taken on honeymoon. It was a quetzal there. It was a one-shot deal out that nest. Every 3 hours it came out and it flew straight across. I had to get it. There was no light. I put it on ISO 3200 because I know I'd get the shutter speed. I used Pro Capture on the OM1 to get it going across the frame. And that's an example where you're using your shutter speed just to be absolutely sure. So in summary, bit of a screen here, get the exposure right. Okay, get the exposure as you want it. Don't just take it and think, oh, I'll process it later and brighten it up, because you brighten the noise. So don't underexpose it on the left-hand side of the histogram if you don't mean to underexpose it. If you obviously mean to, great, but if you're underexposing it, you generally don't need a high ISO, okay, at all, because you're darkening exposure, going minus, so you get more shutter speed anyway, so you don't generally need that. It's only when you're creating one of these beautiful pictures, you know, a normal light picture, you want to make sure your histogram is slightly to the right-hand side, nice and bright, so that you don't have to brighten it anymore. Plenty of really good noise reduction software out there, so don't even bother looking at the RAW at high ISO. Just drag it, the first thing you do, into the noise reduction software. As I say, there's Topaz, there's excellent Photoshop Enhance. You can use DxO if you want. I've stopped using those. I use Photoshop Enhance now because it's absolutely brilliant. It's in Lightroom too. You have to update the ACR and the Lightroom for it, but it doesn't have to be the latest Photoshop. Don't be afraid. This is the biggest thing, right? Don't be afraid to go to high ISO. I've shown you the loads of pictures today that would never have been taken had I not had the courage to use high ISO. They've all sold, okay? They've all gone to picky commercial clients, some for calendars, some for magazines, but they have all sold, because the thing about photography is about capturing the moment, okay? Not about worrying about like what the ISO and what the settings are. It's about capturing the moment. That's the most important thing. So don't be afraid to capture the moment and take all of the pictures that you want. I hope that you enjoyed that anyway. Here's all of my details on this screen. You can follow me on social media. You can obviously, hopefully, subscribe on here to me. I'm running some tours next year to Ecuador and Kenya. So if you want to come and learn how to shoot high ISO in the field with me, please do. I've got my online clubs, Creature Features. I've got online courses. There you go. Wildman Rouse, thank you very much. Get out there, shoot your high ISO, and enjoy your photography. Bye for now. Bye-bye.